there's some confusion on how to manage your data in your various directories in ARC, given the virtual machines we've had. So if you look here in File Explorer, it's this Windows File Explorer is the folder, typically at the bottom. So I can left-click on that and start File Explorer, or I can look for File Explorer here in the search menu and click on the File Explorer app that shows up. And so I'll get an instance of File Explorer every time I do this, right-click and File Explorer. And so I can do another instance of File Explorer. It'll pop up. So I have these various instances of File Explorer. And I like to get several of them open because I can drag and drop from one to the other. And it's a natural way to think about moving or making copies of files. So I've opened two windows here. Now, when you start ARC, it always on the virtual machine in the C drive under Users creates a directory that has your X500 name, P. Bolstad in my case. So if I left-click to there, there's a Documents directory in that. And if I left-click on that, double left-click, there's an ArcGIS folder, and then there's a Projects and a My Projects. And that should look a little familiar to you. What I'm going to do is for today's work, I'm going to make a new directory in there. So if I right-click on it, I can make a new directory, and this is going to be my week 2 work, right? So it's the week 2 there. Over here, I have a target. I want to get to my W drive, and I've already created a data directory and drug the data that we've been giving you over there. So the practice area GDB and the sheds GDB that's off the S drive. I can create another directory here, and I'll call this new directory my 4295 directory. Now I only have to do this once over on my W because it'll last the whole semester. On that C drive, that temporary virtual machine C drive, it will go away within an hour, within 2 hours, within 10 hours, certainly within a day. Anything I create on that C drive will disappear. So this is temporary on the C drive, and I want to copy the temporary stuff over to my home directory W drive over here. So that's this home 4295. And in that, I could make various folders inside the 4295 if I wanted for even more structure. So here I have this week 2. I can see there's nothing in it, right? It's just an empty location, right? So I'll go back to the containing level of the directory. And inside of ArcGIS, when I first started, it asks me, do I want to create a new, or it gives me this opportunity to create a new project. And if I click on a map project, use that blank template, this should look familiar. C, Users, P. Bolstad, Documents, ArcGIS, Projects. That was the default, and then it would put it in that My Projects folder, but I don't want that. I want to put it in my week 2 folder. I'm going to make a new project I'm going to work on in the week 2 folder, right? So that's going to be the new project location is week 2, and I say, okay, I'm going to give it a name here. Let's call this DigTrees, right? So I do that, and now it creates this DigTrees project inside that C drive in the position in that week 2 where I said I wanted it placed. And now if I look inside of week 2, there's that DigTrees project. It creates first a folder, and then it puts the geodatabase and the project, the APRX file, inside that. So I would go work on this, right? So if I go working basically on my ArcGIS instance here, so I add data, I digitize, I do a bunch of stuff inside this DigTrees project. When I'm done, I would save it, right? And it saves all that stuff then into that directory I just created. Then I would close ARC, right? I'm ready to go home. But before I do anything else, I want to copy my work back to the W drive, or in this case, over to the W drive. So in this 4295 here, I could make a week 2, right? So I'm going to say a new folder because this is week 2, and I'm going to say, okay, here's my week 2 data, right? I go into that, and I would just drag this whole DigTrees directory, right? It contains my DigTrees digital database, my DigTrees project. So if I go back up one, and I have the digtrees folder that encompasses all that. If I just left click and drag it over, everything gets put over, all my work gets saved. So I go home, sleep, work on my other classes. A day, 2, 3 days later, come back and want to work. Well, when I start up the virtual machine again, unless something odd has happened, basically it will have cleaned off all my work. When I come back to it, it will have deleted all this, right? In the new virtual machine, when I navigate through ARC, through that long users, pbolstad, documents, ArcGIS, projects, that would just be this my project again. I want to work on my old stuff. Well, I open up another Windows File Explorer, go to my week 2. Inside I have that digtrees. I can just drag it back, right? And it'll drag it over, and then I can go inside and double click on this digtrees, and it'll start it up right where we left off, loading all my data and everything else. So you want to use Windows Explorer and do dragging back and forth. Now I could very easily, when I'm done doing new work here, so let's say I take that digtrees and I work here on all this stuff, I save my work, but now my work, remember, is on this new version here that's in the C drive on the virtual machine. I could go over here and I could say, oh, I want to save this in a different location. I'm going to call this week 3 because it's a week later. Or I could say week 2, Friday, if I just worked on it the next day. And then I can, again, go up 1, copy this to my new location, right? So this is week 2 Friday. The other one was, let's say, week 2 earlier in the week, and this is at the end of the week. So now my digtrees, I have a copy of it, basically work up until Friday morning, and then all the work I did Friday. And I had the digtrees here, which is an older version, right, of the project. And then I have the digtrees here, which is the latest stuff I've done. So you can have multiple copies as long as they're separated in the directory. If I go in here and want to work on this, then I would copy the digtrees Friday, the one that's in this Friday the 2nd, over to here to work. Now I'd have to be careful that if there was a persistent old digtrees on here, I would have to delete it before I brought it over so it didn't get confused. Used to be that as soon as you logged out, the data from your instance would disappear immediately or almost immediately. That doesn't seem to be the case. I've noticed some of my projects, when I log out of a virtual machine and then start a virtual machine 2 hours later, the projects are persistent. I've never had one last more than an hour up until this year, but they must have reset things differently. But sooner or later, that data will all disappear within a couple hours or a day. If by chance you log on and you have a version existing here, you have to either bring an encompassing folder and work in it, or delete that version and copy over what you had saved. So you don't want 2 copies of the same version. But you can do all this within the Windows File Explorer, and that's the way you want to manage things. Now, if you want to go ahead and turn in your project, right, I ask you to zip up the geodatabase. I can have you right-click on the geodatabase and use the 7-zip to create an archive. And then you could basically create this archive, this digtrees gdb.7z, and that would be what you would turn in, right? Then I can unzip it and look at your progress. So again, you want to do that from inside the W directory and the thing that you've copied, and make sure you send the geodatabase, not the project file, unless I specifically ask for the project file. The GDB is what has all your information. So again, use Windows Explorer to do this. Pre-set up your target folders for the day in both the virtual machine C drive and in the semi-permanent W drive, and copy things back and forth by that dragging and dropping. Hope that helps.